about as close as they'll ever get to seeing what it's like to be a quarterback in this league.
I dedicate my life to football.
All day, all day.
I love to compete. I love the relationships that come with that. I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world.
Welcome back to another edition of Enough Said. My name is Dan Barreiro. I am back after a week hiatus. Justin Gaard is still here, but now Lloyd Fisher's gone, which means we find ourselves in the capable hands of Natalie Brinegar, kind enough to help us out today. Hi, Natalie.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Welcome back. Good to have you.
I'm just glad there's a show after Pierre Nugent's most recent appearance last week, because you never know.
No.
You know, when Pierre's in here, you never know if there's going to be a show when you come back, but thankfully we're still here.
Thank God for the delay system in television.
Well, we're starting off with quarterback. You just saw part of that trailer there. If people didn't know who Kirk Cousins is, they do now. The Netflix show Quarterback ranked the #1 show on the streaming site. Now, I'm only about halfway through the series, but I'm loving it. It's officially been renewed for a second season. Lots of people are saying Cousins just seems like a nice guy, Dan.
Yeah. I may have had some help writing that one.
Yeah, I have a hunch that's probably.
May have had some lead-in help.
Yeah, it's going to be an uphill battle for me today because I've watched about 1/3 of it now. I'm finally getting caught up to speed. I may be the last person in Minnesota to actually, start it. So as unfair as it might be then for me to evaluate it, let me try then to evaluate another aspect of it. Guardsy, you're very familiar with a former Golden Gopher football coach named Glenn Mason.
Yes.
Who appears on our radio show often during the football season. Mason often talks about winning the press conference. And by that he means the coach or athletic director who in front of the cameras does a great job of answering all the questions, comes off good, comes off tough, comes off productive. And his point was, that's great for as far as it goes, but how about the evaluation of the job that the coach does or the athletic director does? To that end, here's my question to you. Are we, and the basis of this well put together, there's no question about it, documentary, too consumed with the idea that Kirk Cousins won the documentary as opposed to what we still, to me, should be most concerned with, and that is, can he win enough games? Can he get us to the playoffs and do something once we're there? We're all getting, you included, too captivated.
Well, I've always been captivated by him.
Winning the doc, okay? And that has its limits, does it not?
Well, of course it does, yes. I'm worried that, though, you're going to walk all of this back when you watch the entire 8 episodes.
You think I'm going to have to backpedal? Yeah.
I think you're coming in way too hot. I think Kirk is going to wow you like he's wowed everybody else. No, I do agree. Obviously, it is going to. Yeah. The first time he throws 2 interceptions or checks it down on 3rd and 8 in a huge spot, people are going to be mad, and then everything that we like about him right now is going to be used against him. That's just human nature.
But you already liked him.
I already like him. To me, this is nothing new. This is confirmation.
And he's likable if a bit occasionally seems wooden or robotic. And does that help there? That's my question. Does Kirk Cousins come off more human, which I think's been part of the challenge with him?
A little bit. Hey, look at this cameo.
Hey.
Yeah, what a great cameo.
I'd have gotten dressed up if I'd have known.
Speaking of winning the documentary.
Should we leave it on that
right
note?
here, yeah, maybe for the whole deal. Now, it is, but he has set himself up if he continues to play well. Because I think a lot of people are being more aware of him, the person, kind of how he goes about things. And he is a very likable guy in that regard. So if he plays well, he has an opportunity to, I think, elevate his status, elevate his place in the league, all of those things. But if he doesn't play well, of course, then he'll be Marcus Mariota.
Everybody's buzzing about it. Nationwide about the documentary itself. They may not be as consumed with Kirk as we are here, but people are into it.
Well, as the Vikings get ready to report to training camp, the team's top draft pick finds himself in some hot water. Jordan Addison was pulled over by state troopers for going 140 miles per hour in a Lamborghini on the interstate. This all happened early Thursday morning on I-94 in St. Paul.
I will quickly get into this before Guardsy, I'm sure, gets involved too. There's an equity issue that shouldn't matter when you do something as idiotic and dangerous as traveling 140 miles per hour in a Lamborghini or a rocket, or I don't care what it is you're driving. But let's be clear about this. If he'd have done this after 2 great years as a receiver, guess what? People would still be annoyed, but it would be a little bit different. This is the worst case scenario when you do it when you have 0 equity. When all you've done is be drafted #1 in the first round and you do it you're going to get more heat. That's real life. It may not be the way it should be. You could say it shouldn't matter, but that's the fact of it.
Yeah, you mentioned a saying about winning the press conference. There's a saying in horse racing that you can't win a race in the paddock, but you can lose it because you get yourself all wound up. The horse gets too crazy, and all of a sudden they lose it. He's down a couple of touchdowns early, right? I mean, this doesn't have to define his career, but he certainly needs to make some type of halftime adjustment if we want to mix football metaphors, because not only is he this stupid and reckless to drive this fast, and for those that go, what's the big deal? We would be people report on 140-mile-an-hour speeds
routinely,
no matter who they are.
Yes.
And so the fact that it's a Vikings player who literally, I don't think, has even practiced because he's been injured, not necessarily his fault, but we know nothing about this guy now, except that he went to USC. We drafted him first round. We expect he's going to be a big part of this deal, and he's made now this ridiculous decision at 3 in the morning to be driving this fast. He's down a couple of touchdowns. Doesn't have to define him.
That's correct.
But he's got some work to do, I would say.
He's on double secret probation, and he has only himself to blame.
Well, the Twins are back home after splitting a series in Seattle. Their bats have been hot since the All-Star break, but the last game against Seattle, not so much. Up next, the White Sox. Dan?
I don't know what to make of this club. I mean, we know that they've struggled mightily despite the fact that they've stayed in or near first place because it's such a wretched division. They sweep Oakland, which I can't get excited about for all the obvious reasons. The A's are one of the worst teams literally in the history of baseball.
On their way out of town.
And on their way out of town. And they split four with a decent, with a 500 team, Seattle. Have they figured some stuff? Maybe Correa is better off as a leadoff hitter because it does seem he's hitting better. Is he hitting with more discipline? Is he being more selective, which you associate with the leadoff position? Maybe they've hit on something there.
Are these all our strikouts, by the way, that we're watching?
No, that's probably
It's hard
true.
to find other video, but go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, we're just going to have to see this thing play out before we, because in baseball you can have a 5 or 6 game stretch. Kepler has had a better stretch, you could say, than that. I still don't trust him. But we've seen in baseball players who don't make any sense getting hot, stay hot for a while. So in terms of the hitting, I know we're going to talk about Buxton in a minute. It's looking a little bit better. You got a couple of non-household names, including Julian, the second baseman, who's got to find a place regardless of when Polanco comes back. My only little bit of concern is it seems like the starting pitching that we counted on, some of the heavyweights are coming back to the pack a little bit as well.
Well, that was always the worry about when it was such a historic start, is they're hovering around 500, and the pitching really can't get any better. By definition, the only thing it can do is regress a little bit. Yeah, the non-household names like Julian, like Kirilloff, who's been outstanding. It does go to show you, though, it doesn't take much to get an offense going. When a couple of guys get hot, all of a sudden everything looks different. What this team really needs to do, and now we're within a week or so of training camp when everybody's focus is going to shift over to the Vikings. If you really want to capture attention and hearts and minds, as we like to say, don't you have to go on like a 10-2 stretch? I think they're 5-2 now after the All-Star break.
And they're back home now.
Yeah, and you've got the White Sox. So theoretically, you should be able to go, you should be able to sweep them this weekend, or at least, take 2 or 3, 3 or 4, whatever it is. But you need a stretch of like 2.5 weeks where you lose 2 or 3 games and you extend the lead to 4 or 5, and a couple of guys are hot, including maybe a Correa or a household name, and then you can go, all right, things have stabilized, they're moving forward. But until that happens, you hit it at the top, it's hard to know what to make of them.
Well, don't forget, you can watch the Twins on Saturday on Fox 9.
Good plug.
And one of the Twins off the field for a couple games this week. Byron Buxton has been in a hitting slump. He's now gone 0 for 26 since July. Dan?
Well, this is where I think it's hard for me to get all that optimistic about the club, because with Buxton historically, when he went into slumps, although this year he's had prolonged slumps every month.
Multiple times,
Major 0-4 slumps in literally every calendar month of the season thus far. You could say, you know what, though? Look what he's going to do in center. He might literally save 2 runs here, 3 runs there, 1 run here. We can't have that fallback anymore, that consolation that allowed you to think that no matter what he is offensively, even if he's not as consistent as he was supposed to be when we were told he was the greatest, 5-tool prospect ever, you got him in center, man, patrolling basically from foul line to foul line. And clearly that ship has sailed, and I think that's why it's hard for me, beyond the rest of this season, to be all that optimistic about where this thing is going. It makes me feel like our expectations on him are even more limited than we thought they were going to be when the decision was made that he was going to become the full-time DH. It's fine to be a full-time DH, but if you're going to do that, you have to obviously have to hit better. If you don't, you're going to then remind us of we ought to be back in center field, which they say he's no longer capable of doing.
One of the strangest careers that I can remember, from the hype, which isn't his fault necessarily. We've never had hype for a prospect like this, probably since Joe Mauer, right, who delivered on most of it. But with Buxton, it was everything that you mentioned. It was all the tools. We were talking about that he had 6th and 7th tools that nobody even knew about because that's how special he was. And for whatever the reason, it used to be he couldn't stay healthy because he ran into walls. Now he just can't stay healthy, or just even hitting seems to wear him down. And we know it's not for lack of effort. We know it's not because he doesn't work hard getting in shape. It's just one of those strange deals where no matter what you do, no matter how many accommodations you try to make to keep him on the field, nothing has worked for an extended period of time. And to have, these 0 streaks in May, June, and July, you're always waiting for that, month where all of a sudden he heats up, hits 350, hits 15 home runs, maybe steals a couple of bases if he can stay on the field with that. But it just feels like it's never going to happen with this guy, which is unfortunate given all the hype.
We're talking about a guy who, the way we're talking about him, you think he's 37 years old. He's not even 30 yet.
29 right now.
Not his fault, but it's just daunting to think about what his career, how it's going to play out, or how long it's going to last.
But when we all came together and worked together in conjunction with the community, in conjunction with our crime prevention office of neighborhood safety and violence interrupters and et cetera, it all played a significant role in keeping those numbers driven south.
Well, Minneapolis's top public safety official is stepping down just over a year after taking the job. Cedric Alexander is the city's highest paid employee. This was a new position created by the city. It oversees 5 departments: 911, police, fire, emergency management, and neighborhood safety. Dan?
I don't even know where to begin on this. I'm hoping eventually we're going to get the whole story and the true reason why he is quote unquote retiring, because I'm not buying the public relations effort. But if you go back to the beginning, Justin, one of the things that that set alarm bells off for me when the mayor introduced this position and this individual to be the guy, he called it a seminal event. And the buzzword police, for me, that alarm goes off when you start using terms like that. And I would say, respectfully to the mayor, if it was that seminal an event, why is it over, at least for him, 1 year later? You cannot tell me, given how complicated a challenge this is, and I don't doubt this is a tough job.
Big time.
And I don't doubt that there were some people sadly rooting against him, making it tougher for him than necessary. And I don't even doubt that he didn't even get some of the resources that he needed. And I think that's all fair. I'm still left with this feeling that this was more about, ends up being more again about bureaucracy and public relations than anything else. And so I don't know. I know the real world, the way it works. How often do you get the true story, the real story? But it's given how much time it was going to take to do this, what sense does it make to invest in him and then say, yeah, a year later, okay, good, like we're good.
Right.
The base has been established.
Right.
Like a football coach establishing a new football program. And by the way, there's a hell of a lot more at stake here than in a football program. I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it at all.
Yeah, you obviously thought it was important enough, and I think most of us agree that it was, to create this position. It did not exist before Cedric Alexander took it, right?
Correct.
Pay him $330-some thousand, as Natalie mentioned, the highest paid city employee.
I think that's more than the mayor and the governor combined, by the way.
And it's in the ballpark for sure. And then just a year later, have it just completely gone. So I'd want to know what's next. And I know people have asked that. Are you going to keep the position? Are you going to fill the position? Is it going to be a thing where you have multiple people trying to do the job of one person? I don't know. But in some of these interviews that I've watched and that I've read, when he says, whoever takes my spot now will be on solid foundation. First of all, do we know that? I don't know. And he also said people are coming back downtown. We've made it safe. Do we know that? I think there's mixed reviews on that.
The victory lap after 1 year? You're doing a victory lap?
Enough said.
I'd also add, I certainly hope the foundation is somewhat set. if this is what you were paid, and like you said, to circle back to seminal moment, this is what this hire and this job was supposed to represent. I don't necessarily buy any of it, though, at this point.
Real quick, Star Tribune quoting, when Alexander presented an organizational chart showing a chief of staff, a personal assistant, and a litany of media specialists, some council members questioned why his office was beginning to resemble a public relations firm. I'm no friend always of decisions that the city council makes, but I think it's a fair question, and it's part of what was suspicious about this whole thing. Is this about making change, or is this about just sort of making everybody or yourself look good?
All right, moving on. New details from Northwestern University about the hazing scandal on the football team. Attorneys claim the allegations of hazing within the university's athletic programs go beyond the football field and include both male and female athletes from several sports teams. Now, several football players gathered to share some details from their experiences, and last week the head football and head baseball coaches were fired.
This is the little school by the lake, Dan, that no one really pays attention to. That the more we're hearing about it, it just seems like they were just doing whatever they wanted to do, running whatever culture they wanted to run. And specifically on the football side of it, the more we're learning about it, and Natalie mentioned all the players now that have come forward, The Athletic did, like The Athletic does, a very good deep dive, talking to players from all generations, going all the way back to when Pat Fitzgerald was a player. And some of this stuff was going on at the now infamous Camp Kenosha, their preseason training camp, and things that maybe in the 90s you could get away with a little bit, that started innocently enough, continue to just grow and grow and grow into more humiliating things, more degrading things, more inappropriate things. You go down the list for whatever adjective you want to do. And because no one really cares about the cute little school in Evanston, and because they have this academic reputation, and going to Northwestern is seen as such an opportunity for student athletes and for anybody, nobody wants to upset that apple cart. And you see where this thing just went completely out of control. The details on this continue to get worse.
Let me try a hypothetical on you.
Sure.
If you're Pat Fitzgerald and for whatever reason you believe that this nonsense somehow does fuel team building,
right,
which I don't get, because it just looks to me like a frat house out of control is
Yep.
what it looks like to me. It's just so absurd. But let's say you believe it. How in 2023, as a fairly savvy guy, do you think in this day and age especially, you're going to be able to maintain it?
Right.
That it's not going to get out? That's the part that I'm just confounded by.
Because he's too smart to be this dumb.
I would think so.
Yeah.
But maybe we find out he's not as bright as we thought, or, you know, his notion that he didn't know about it, to quote Glenn Mason again, you're either lying or you're incompetent.
Right.
Because you got to know about it, or if you do know about it, you're just not willing
Somebody
to admit
knows about it.
Exactly right.
Well, the NBA will play its first ever in-season tournament next season. According to league officials, the tournament will feature several rounds and group play ahead of the knockout rounds. Each player on the championship team will receive a $500,000 bonus.
Well, you could say it's off season. Why are we talking basketball in the middle of the abyss?
Right around the corner.
It's not that far off. We know that. And I got to tell you, as somebody who likes to consider himself kind of a pro basketball purist, I've always loved the sport. I've gotten frustrated by some things. I like this. I like at least trying this. And, you know, speaking of the purist part of me, hated this load management trend that we've talked about on this show before. And my hope is that maybe this will discourage some of that. Some teams, by load management, we mean basically letting players
sit when they want,
make their own schedule, thereby further cheapening the regular season, even though you're still asking people to pay outrageous prices to see them, and you're still putting the games on TV. If this will discourage some of that, and maybe even make, you know, the possibility that something different can grow, because at the start, it's not going to look like anything, right? Because there's no tradition attached to it. But I think it's got a chance. Maybe you fine-tune it. I like the thinking a little bit out of the box here. I'm not as offended by some of the other old-timers.
Yeah, I'm all for trying stuff that you think is going to help your game. I think it makes sense to not get complacent, and it's all going to come down to how the players react to it, right?
Sure.
I mean, and that's why they're incentivizing with $500,000 to the championship team. Does that matter to LeBron James? Probably not, but it might to the rest of his teammates who aren't making that kind of supermax crazy money. So if the players and the teams take it seriously, and I'm guessing they wouldn't go through all this talking about the NBA if they didn't have some type of David Stern-like warning, right? That this is important to the league, it's important to our partners, it's important to us, it better be important to you. then I'm all for it as well. I just wish we had Pat Beverly on the Timberwolves, Dan, because he's a perfect guy to inflate the importance of a mid-season NBA tournament, possibly win it and celebrate like you won the NBA title.
Will you help raise the banner if
Absolutely.
we win the mid-season? I will too. I can't be two-faced about it. I'd say
we should go to Vegas.
Well, time for lightning round. We're starting off with some sad news. Tony Bennett has died. The legendary singer was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in 2016, but only retired from live performances in 2021. He was 96 years old.
Sad news, but a hell of a run. That's what we should be celebrating, man.
Yep.
That's a nice chunk of life that you can get it. And the ultimate compliment to Tony Bennett, Frank Sinatra said he was the best. And when the best tells you you're the best, I mean, what other compliment can you possibly appreciate beyond that?
Kind of like when Patrick Mahomes called Kirk Cousins the most underrated quarterback in the NFL that we talked about on the radio. Legacy is there anybody this guy didn't do a duet with? A huge star that put out a bunch of duet albums because of what you said. Everybody wanted to work with him, right?
Created a second life and gained a lot of younger fans for precisely the reason you just mentioned. You're right.
Well, some running backs in the NFL say they're not valued. Several taking to Twitter this week expressing their frustrations, many of them still without a team.
Well, if you're going to pay your quarterbacks $50 million, the money's got to come from somewhere. And is it fair to the running backs? No. But I'm guessing, Dan, 10, 15 years ago, wide receivers were probably underpaid. Offensive guards were probably underpaid. Special teams guys were probably underpaid. Like, there's only a finite amount of resources to go around. And with all these teams now paying quarterbacks at least $30 million if you're a starter, the money's got to come from somewhere.
I agree, but I will say again, if you do not have Pat Mahomes at quarterback, I still think there is room for spending some money on a running back who can help take the pressure off. In a perfect world, doesn't matter if you got Mahomes, but how many teams have Patrick Mahomes? I think one.
Well, when the Vikings kick off the new season, they'll be doing so in a blast from the past, wearing some throwback uniforms. And we got to look at them this week, and that's what they look like. I like them.
I think they're solid. Yeah, I think they're clean looking.
60s
I kind of
and
like
70s
a clean
era,
look.
right?
Yeah, pretty much is what they're saying. I mean, Justin, you know this better than I. The degree to which uniform changes and adding uniforms is about more than anything just making money, and we can
sell more.
I mean, how many? Your average college football team has like 30 different uniforms, don't they, these days? It's insane.
Yeah, they do. Now, I'll take the trade-off of these throwbacks if we can just get to the Super Bowl and lose like they did in those uniforms back then. Well, in my lifetime, we've never been to one.
So you'll take it just to get there.
Just to get there once. I don't even care if we win, and we can wear those uniforms.
It's been a while.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Well, it's the day we've all been waiting for, or at least I have. The Barbie movie is now out, and I can't wait to see it. It's just, I feel like it's all over the world right now.
Well, the big debate is, do you go see, what is it, Oppenheimer or Barbie?
I'm going to lean Oppenheimer.
That's the big debate.
Is this going to be all gender related? I don't know. I mean, a lot of girls
I think I'd go see
and
Barbie.
Women grew up with. I mean, is the Barbie doll still as popular as it once was?
Barbie's pretty big.
It is still
Barbie's
big.
pretty big.
Okay.
And Ryan Gosling can still do whatever he wants. I mean, that guy, that dude. I mean,
he's on a roll.
I'll go for Gosling.
Yeah.
Making us all feel bad about how we look.
But Natalie told us it's PG. If you're going to do an
PG-13.
adult Barbie, then make it R and let's spice the thing up a little bit.
Gosling can get spicy at PG-13.
Don't sanitize it.
He can get spicy in PG-13.
Okay.